What's going on, world? This is your girl, Marky Lemons-Ryhal. And you know what? I'm not easily impressed. However, when I came over to this gentleman's profile, I saw MD. Actually, I did not see MD in his profile. I went and started researching him, and I realized that. But look, he is a trained MD, but he decided that he would bring his skill set and his talents to the almighty world of real estate. So today, I'm just because you definitely have the title, I am going to call you Dr. Sunil Saxena, and I had to get myself straight on the pronunciation. I think I did okay. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here and share any knowledge, wisdom, or questions, or whatever you want to talk about. I'm here for you.
Well, here's what's interesting. As I was doing my research, one, I know that you're very driven on investing, right, in real estate. But then I'm like, but man, he has a plethora of information on life hacking. And then I was like, oh, and then he's also an author, and you have the 30 days to awesomeness. So I was like, I was a little bit overwhelmed, and I'm like, well, I don't know what we should focus on. But then you got me straight. And we are going to focus on today about how we as realtors can work with investors, especially today. We are in a uber seller's market. We hear realtor after realtor after realtor complaining about a lack of listed inventory. And I want you to be clear, I did say listed inventory. And the reason is because I believe that there is some inventory out there. So help me out here. As a big time investor, right? How would a realtor engage you? What do I need to do?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, first, I think you already alluded to, is that I think every real estate agent should be working with investors. I see very few do that. I don't know why, but I think everybody should. Every real estate agent should, because again, it's repeat business. Investors are once you know what they want, if you have that product, they'll pretty much buy it from you. It's a done deal. You can get 2 commissions, right? When you sell it to them, and then when they fix it up and then they sell it. So there's a number of reasons why I think every real estate agent should be working with investors. You should have kind of maybe 3 to 5 investors in your back pocket. So if you come across a deal that makes sense for an investor, right away, you can just call your group of investors. Hey, I got a deal for you, and it should be, done very quickly. But your question was more like, how do you work with investors?
Well, let's say I don't know any. Let's say I don't know any investors, right?
Okay.
And they say, okay, well, I like everything that he said. I want that repeat business. Oh, I'm loving the idea of these 2 commissions. And think about it. Generally, that first commission is going to be a little smaller, right, than the second commission. So that means they got to hang out. But how would the realtors who get your business,
right?
How did they engage you in the first place for them to put you in their back pocket?
Yeah, it's understanding how investors think. That's the biggest thing, right? So as a real estate agent, you've got, if you got your retail clients and you got your investor clients, we think very differently. So a retail client is more of an emotional decision. It's like, hey, where do I want to live? The school districts, the granite countertops, it's an emotional decision because you're going to live in that house. For us, it's all business, 100% business. We just want to know the numbers. If the numbers make sense, we're going to move forward. So I think the biggest thing is just knowing how to present a deal to an investor. And if you present it properly and the numbers make sense, you're going to have a line of investors out the door that want that deal. So I think it's just really understanding how we think and presenting the numbers properly.
And in presenting the numbers properly, I know that there's definitely a lot of acronyms that you're looking for. I'm generally talking ROI, return on investment, KPI, key performance indicators. When they're coming to you with these numbers, what are some of the core things you're looking for in that presentation?
Yeah, really, it's 3 big numbers is what you have to be really comfortable with and get to know as a real estate agent. And it's not really hard. It's just kind of getting to know it a little bit. So number 1 is what we call ARV, which is after repair value. So what we do is we look at a property. We say, okay, well, once this thing is fixed up or we've maximized it or we've done whatever we want with it, what is the ARV, the after repair value? So again, the real estate agents I've worked with many, many over my career. I want to be able to trust their opinion. And when they say, hey, this thing's going to sell for this when I'm done with it, I want it to sell for that number or more. So you have to know your ARV and you have to know your market and your comps. I've worked with a few agents over the year where we've done a deal or two. They didn't give me the right ARVs because they were off. And then I was like, man, I can't keep working with you because I'm losing money here by working with you. So the one big number is ARV. That's the first one. Present it properly, have your proper comps. Number two is, of course, purchase price. Like, what are we purchasing it for? What kind of deal can you get me? That's relatively easy because, here's the number. Usually this is what they're asking, or, whatever we can get it for. And then number three is, what is it going to cost me to take it from, A to B? So you've got a property here today. We're buying it for $500,000. We're putting in $200,000. That's that third number. And then we're going to sell it for $1 million. Let's say, I'm just making up numbers here. So being able to, roughly estimate what that middle number is, that how much is going to take to go from point A to point B. And again, we're not expecting the real estate agents to be specialists and contractors and know what a roof costs and all that kind of stuff, but a general either per square foot number, or like hey, this house needs a lot of work. We need to put about 50,000 into it, or 100,000 or whatever. That's the big three numbers. Once we have those numbers, then we can get a pretty good idea if the deal is going to make sense or not.
So when we're talking about the cost of repairs, and I'm actually glad to be able to ask you this question, how are you dealing with the current cost of lumber?
Yeah, I mean, our construction budgets are probably up 10% across the board. We're doing we're doing large projects like 30, 50 unit buildings. So lumber is one component of that construction budget. It's gone up like 400%, but the other numbers, some of them have stayed about the same. So overall, we're about 10% up. But again, we have enough margin on our projects that, and our out sales are up too. So like example of a project I just sold recently, our construction budget was about $1 million. So we're at 10% up, we're at 1.1, but our out sale was $3 million, and that's also up 10%. So we're making $300,000 more on the project, even though we're spending $100,000 more. So net, we're actually making more money. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because I am definitely seeing that people are coming back on these deals, right? Because of this increase. But then what you just gave me actually is a negotiating strategy. If you are a buyer who was doing a project that wasn't complete, yes, the developer likely is going to see an increase in the cost of lumber, but because there's also going to be an increase in the price, do not allow your pricing as a percentage to supersede the cost of the lumber, right? Because I want my buyers to essentially get a fair deal, right? So they shouldn't make more money because the cost of lumber went up. They should not have to spend more money because the cost of lumber went up. If you're representing a buyer, and as you were saying it, I was like, I could see how we could negotiate that, because of course I never want to lose money, but I never want my client to lose money either. Now, when we go back and we start talking about the after repair value, and you talked about building enough into the margins, I happen to live in a house that the developer lost it to foreclosure. We've been in this house now for 10 years. It was built in 2007. And when I bought the house, I overbid it on the house. And I tell realtors all the time, your first offer should be your best offer. Two things I live by. Your first offer should be your best offer. And in today's market, I don't know why anyone would ever come back and ask for highest and best. Okay. So your first offer should be your best offer. With that being said, when we bought this house, I built into the fact that the market was downhill at that point. I built in future depreciation. But I still came back 1 year later and did a rate and term refinance at a 63% loan to value, even though I built in 10% depreciation. And so you definitely want to work with that realtor who understands numbers. And every realtor does not understand numbers. Or they don't understand the community. So I interviewed a young lady earlier today. Her name is Kimberly Alford. She just authored some new books. And what she said to me that stood out, she said, you cannot be the realtor to a community that you do not serve and are not vested in. If you truly serve that neighborhood and you're vested, when you understand those intersections, right? You understand what's coming to the community. So then if we have these different issues, they've built those numbers into that after repair value. So those three numbers are after repair value. How well are they going to negotiate this purchase price for you? And then having some understanding on the cost of repairs. And if there was ever a lumber shortage. So what has been the most creative thing that a realtor has done to meet with you?
The most creative thing. Recently, my social media is kind of blowing up a little bit now, so I've got a fair amount of people just sending me personalized videos. So that's a kind of an interesting way to get in front of somebody you want to really work with, because again, I think it's worth your time and effort to work with a few good investors. I said like 3 to 5 is the number I always say. So it's worth just shooting a quick video saying, hey, use their name. This is who I am. This is how I can help you specifically. And then, I felt like when these people sent me videos, I'm like, wow, they really want my business, or, they really want to work with me. So I actually took more time to listen to what they had to say. So I think that's a great strategy, is just shoot a quick video on your phone, tell them how you can help them, and then send it off to them. And, hopefully they'll want to work with you.
So I preach video. I mean, 100% preach video all the time. And as I tell people, I don't think of Zillow as my competition. Well, one, financially, I can't compete with Zillow and their ad spend. And Zillow cannot compete with me with feet on the ground on the south side of Chicago, creating video content every single day.
Right.
To the point that when I'm in the grocery store with a mask and a baseball cap on, people know my voice because they hear my video so much, right?
Yeah.
But what I love is that as an investor, you are encouraging realtors to create video content. Well, one, because it's the most engaging form of content, right?
Absolutely.
In order to get your business. So if my fellow realtors haven't heard anything else, I want them to know you need to create video, and I'm going to say it in marquee terminology. You need to create a video, slither yourself on into the DMs on the different social platforms of the people you want to do business with, and send it to them. Now, we just say slide into the DM, but I'm thinking more like a snake, right? Just come on up in there.
Right.
But you have to allow yourself to stand out. You want to stand out. And everybody's not willing to create the video. And you already know the video is going to sell the property. It's going to help sell the property.
It's like a simple, just take your phone real quick. Doesn't have to be anything. Just record a quick video. It takes like less than 5 minutes.
Now, there were some other things that I liked about your profile, though, right? And I saw a video. It's a very popular video of yours, right? I call it house hacking. Okay. Right. I don't know. You could tell me I could be wrong with that terminology.
Yes.
But break down how you live in a multi-million-dollar house for $1,250 a month. Because I'm trying to figure it out. Help me out.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, it's house hacking. Exactly. I'm such a real estate investor. My brain always is thinking how I can, make money or save money or whatever. I guess but basically I'm single. So I have a very large house. I actually built the house. Actually, I'm here right now in that particular house. So I built the house. Initially, I built it as a builder to sell it, but I decided to keep it for investment purposes. Rented it to one person for like a number of years, like 3 years. And then I decided to move back in, but I had all this extra space. I mean, I have like 9 bedrooms here. So I'm like, why would I don't even use it. So I'm like, let me just rent out other rooms. These people are usually younger. They're professionals. They've kind of become my friends now. And so it works out. So my mortgage is about $5,500 a month. When you add up all the rents I get from the 4 people, I only spend about $1,250 a month on the mortgage. But if you really want a house hack, what I recommend is buying a multifamily. So buying like a 2 or 3 or 4 unit. And that way, one of the disadvantages, I don't mind it, but one of the disadvantages, people are kind of living in my house. But if you have a multi-unit, then they're living in different units. And typically in that scenario, you can actually live for free. So I'm actually still paying to live here, but in those scenarios, you can live for free because the 2 or 3 or 4, whatever extra mortgages or whatever should cover your full mortgage. So yeah, I think house hacking is great. If you're, I still do it.
What's funny? So I got my first property back in 1994. It was a 3-flat with a garden apartment. It was my mom's building. I moved in on the 3rd floor. I got it for $40,000 at the time. It was worth $85,000. And we didn't call, like back in 1994, we didn't call it house hacking, right? I was just simply living for free. That's the thing. That's how we talked about it. And so it's taken on a new terminology. And I actually sent your Instagram account to my son. He's 25 and he's a licensed broker. And all he talks about is house hacking. So I said, hey, I need you to check this out today because he lives in a multi-million-dollar house for $1,250. Now, we understand that perception often for people is reality, right? And there are a lot of people out here, I call it perpetrating, presenting a lifestyle that they can't afford. So first thing is, if you can qualify for the $1 million house, here's another way to hack. And because my family came from down south, there was a time that if we were to go back to the 20s, right, the 1920s, they were all living together in very close-knit living quarters in order to save money to buy something. That same concept now is house hacking. But you also have another concept, and that is how to drive exotic cars for free. So when I attend a real estate event, there's a long list of expensive cars outside, right? Mercedes, BMW, Maserati, Range Rover, they just lined up. I wish I did not have a car note. Actually, outside of our mortgages, my car note is probably the most expensive bill we have. So I want to know, how can I go perpetrate a fraud and look like I'm rich and drive exotic cars for free in order to impress investors who might just be getting their feet wet and don't know no different?
Well, we're not here to fraud or impress anybody. I enjoy cars. I mean, that's one of my passions and my hobbies. So I enjoy cars. But again, as an investor, even though I could go out and buy a brand new, whatever, Bentley or whatever, I might have an allergic reaction when I think about spending like $300,000 on a car. So what most real estate gurus will tell you that are in my space is, go buy a piece of real estate, use the profit from that to go buy a new or relatively new car, exotic car. And actually, what I'm talking about here actually works better with exotic cars, which are like Bentleys, Ferraris, Rolls Royce, those kind of cars. Because they're more in like limited production, so there's more of a demand for them. So essentially, if you go to my social media, you can check out Exotic Car Hacks. It's like a whole training program. It's not my training program. It's a partner of mine, a person I know very well. So if you really want to get into it, you can check that out. But the idea behind it is buying the car at the bottom of the depreciation curve. So when cars, when they're brand new, they depreciate very quickly. They have a steep depreciation curve. But at some point, usually about year 5 to 6, they kind of that curve flattens out. And with cars like Mercedes and BMW, that curve never really flattens. It always kind of like still trends down. But with the exotic cars, that curve tends to flatten and sometimes even go back up. So sometimes when you buy a Ferrari, a certain year-old Ferrari, it'll actually go up in price over time once it hits that bottom. So, for example, my most recent hack I just bought a couple months ago was a 2015 Bentley. It's a GT, 25,000 miles, perfect car, perfect condition. And basically, I bought it in the mid 80s, like 84,000. But I'm going to be probably able to sell that car in 6 months to a year, probably in the 90s, like 93, 94. So I'm going to actually either make money or break even because I still got to pay my taxes, my insurance, all that stuff. But basically, I'm driving a really, really nice car for free. So that's kind of the concept, if that made sense. Hopefully that made sense.
Oh, that did make sense. And there's a gentleman, Mark Little, the husband of Carrie Little. Now we understand why Mark has 20 exotic cars sitting in front of their house, right? And he has Carrie driving in the middle of the night to farms up in Minnesota, picking up cars to bring them back. So you just actually explained what we see, but he never really explained it. And there's particular cars that he goes to get, and they put a lift in their garage because they have so many cars.
I haven't gotten to that point yet.
Mark is serious about his car. So now I understand how I would need to do that for potentially the next car that I would buy. And I would just drive for free for a couple of years, then sell it, and then wash, rent, repeat for that. Now, I'm taking a look here because you talked about the fact that you do bigger projects, but then I'm also seeing that you do some single family homes. How do we as realtors, because you also have 30 days to awesomeness.
Right.
how do we shift our mind, right, to an investor-driven mindset? Because I know it's a shift. Fundamentally, there was something that changed. What does that look like?
Well, again, I mean, I think it's more understanding that investors are very numbers and bottom line driven. So it's more, again, that's why I feel like maybe that's probably the limiting factor why a lot of real estate agents don't make that transition and work with investors, because they're more working with emotional buyers which is fine. I mean, when you're buying your own house, you should be emotional about it. You should enjoy what it is, not look at every single number and, does it make sense? Because you want to enjoy it, right? You're going to raise your family or whatever there. But really, you just have to shift that mindset and look at investor is just going to be very cut and dry. We're going to be very like, what are the numbers? If the numbers make sense, then I want to talk about it more. Like a perfect example, like I'm working with a relatively new agent in Florida. We're buying properties down there right now. And she was very much like, oh, hey, do you want to go see the property? I'll meet you at the property. I'm like, I don't want to say her name, but I'm like, look, I don't have time to go see the property. Just send me the numbers. If the numbers make sense, then I'll take my time to go start, investigating it further. So she's thinking more like a retail buyer. They want to see the property. They want to get to know the property. So I don't really care. I bought so many properties sight unseen, just because I just know the area and I just know if the numbers make sense. So it's just a mindset difference, and you have to be able to kind of shift gears. But I think it's definitely worth it to work with investors because, like we talked about earlier.
So I'm looking at that whole sight unseen as that would definitely be a mind shift, because we believe that we need to go and see everything, but it's based 100% on the numbers and the return. So then that also means that investors are more likely to purchase sight unseen. And when we start looking at today's real estate market, as soon as that property hits, being able to have a line of credit and not have to see the property means that investors can often outbid a consumer, right? And the lack of contingencies, because you likely don't have nearly as many contingencies. So what I have noticed, and I'm just going to go back in time, there's a fellow realtor here in the city of Chicago. And if we brought him any deals before they were actually put on the market, then he would waive his buy-side compensation. Now, he and I did a couple of deals together, but I want to reference this. When it comes to old car providing obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accountability, and reasonable skill and care, I'm real big on undivided loyalty. So before I would ever call this agent, I would always have my property already priced. Okay, because this is about my seller, not about me getting extra money on the sale. And just the fact that he was a cash buyer, he was going to come see that property at 8 a.m. There was just one little stipulation, and they were adamant about this. They wanted that property in broom swept clean condition, but he was going to close. He would see the property before anyone else. While the average realtor trying to get the gunk out of the corner of the eyes, he there bright and early with a coffee. Talking about, let's take a look. What you bringing it to the market for? 110. Oh, okay. Let me get back to you. Hey, I'm gonna send you an offer in a few hours. And that offer would come in generally at whatever I was going to list it for. However, it had to be broom swept clean. And if it was not, we was not going to go to the closing table. They would delay that closing, right? And so understanding those numbers and that mentality, that sight unseen, in today's market, what do you see as being a trend right now? We've talked about the house hacking, but what's an emergent trend? What's different today than before the pandemic?
Different the pandemic. I don't know. I mean, one of the things we've gotten into recently is short-term rentals. We're finding that's a really, really good market. I think my business partner lives in Florida now. I'm actually probably going to be spending I'm buying a place down there now. So I'm going to be like spending half my time down there. I think there's a trend towards, working remotely, and people realizing that you actually can have a full-time job and work remotely. So that's improving. A lot of people want to say, well, I'll spend 3 months in Florida. I'll spend 3 months in, I don't know, the mountains or whatever. We're seeing that. The other thing we're seeing, I don't know if you've heard that term, Zoom towns versus boom towns. So we used to have that term, boom towns, right? Like, Colorado and California, the boom towns, right? We was going out there for some reason. Now we're hearing the term Zoom town. So what's happening is there's a lot of towns in Utah and places where people still have their job they're keeping in San Francisco, but instead of spending, $3,000 a month on a 1-bedroom little apartment, they're getting a huge house with a yard, and they've got natural parks and beauty and all that stuff. So a lot of real estate areas are popping that weren't popping before. So I think the short-term rental and kind of getting out of the big cities is probably what I'm seeing, at least now. I don't know if I think it'll continue. I think the pandemic kind of forced it. Before we used to use Zoom and we were kind of comfortable with it. We kind of weren't, but after the pandemic, like everybody does it now. It's like no big deal. So
you just gave me an idea. So if we looked at the migration map, they definitely show people leaving San Francisco, going to Utah. They're leaving Chicago, and they're going to Indianapolis and Columbus. Mm-hmm. And my friends are coming in town from Seattle, and they just bought a house in Ohio. And everybody was like, why did you buy this house in Ohio?
There you go.
So now instantly I'm thinking of the Zoom town and how you could house hack like you've done in your house with the house in Zoom town. And those bedrooms are now office suites, or they could be bedroom or workspace, live spaces that you could rent out. And if you have the best Wi-Fi, right, the highest internet speed possible in this town, this could be a whole new business, and you could have a place in every single city you desire to live with house hacking in Zoom towns.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with it too, because I want to have like vacation rentals in every place I want to visit, so I can just have my own place when I go there. But yeah, there's so much changing. I think the pandemic just accelerated this. This was already happening, but the pandemic just kind of accelerated it. I think that's what's happened.
Ooh, you just you've given me a whole lot of great ideas, but this whole Zoom town, like that's just a straight up strategic plan that one could come up with. And I love it because I had not heard it called Zoom town, but it makes all the sense now. So for my fellow realtors, Redfin actually has a migration tool that Brian Buffini spoke of. Go and see where people are going. If you desire if that's a place you also desire, go look at a bigger house. Think about house hacking that house. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you got great Wi-Fi, I think it'll be a lot easier for anyone who's coming there in order to work. I know that you have books and you do a lot. How would one connect with you and do business with you?
Yeah, certainly check out my social media. I'm the Sunil Saxena on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, I think as well. And I have a YouTube channel. So I have all that going. I have people that do that for me. I'm not very super good at it. But yeah, just shoot me a DM on any of those platforms. And if you have any questions or anything, I'd be happy to help. We run a monthly investor group here as well in DC, but if you're local to DC, in fact, our meeting is tomorrow night. So there's multiple ways to get a hold of me. If you have any questions or want to, explore something further.
I'm going to refer a young gentleman to you. He's in DC right now. He actually owns real estate there. He's a graduate of Howard University. My son is a 2019 graduate of Howard University. And so there is a strong network there of young investors or desire to be investors that we can send your way. Well, you know what? I 100% appreciate you for your time, your energy, and teaching realtors today on one. I'm loving all the life hacks. So now I can see how I'm going to get me this next car, right? And this next house, and better yet, have the house pay for the car. And so then I will get a return on investment, just being a little bit more strategic about it. So thank you, Dr. Sunil. I appreciate you for your time and energy today.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Take care. Bye-bye.